On a crisp autumn afternoon, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the small town of Willow Creek. The leaves of the trees fluttered in the breeze, turning shades of amber and crimson as Emma made her way home from school. At just 9 years old, she was used to the peaceful stroll through the woods that connected her school to her house. It was a route she took every day, and the sounds of the forest had become as familiar to her as the hum of the classroom. But today, something felt different. Emma adjusted the strap of her backpack and hummed a quiet tune, lost in thought. The rhythmic crunch of fallen leaves beneath her sneakers was interrupted by a strange noise, a soft rustling, just beyond the trees. She paused and looked toward the sound, narrowing her eyes. It wasn't the usual woodland creatures. No squirrels scurrying or birds calling. This sound was heavier, more deliberate. Curious, she took a step forward, her heart skipping in her chest. She wasn't sure what to expect, but Emma had always been brave, never afraid to explore the mysteries of the woods that surrounded her home. As she walked toward the noise, the figure of something large caught her eye, a shadow among the trees. Then she saw it, a lone wolf. The creature stood in a small clearing, its body thin, its fur ragged and unkempt. It looked out of place, as though it had wandered too far from its pack. Its golden eyes met Emma's, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Emma could feel the weight of those eyes on her, a mixture of wariness and curiosity. The wolf didn't growl or bark, as she might have expected. Instead, it stood perfectly still, as if unsure whether to trust the little girl in front of it. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her first instinct was to run, to get away from the wild animal that seemed so foreign to her. But then she noticed something. Its ribs were visible beneath its fur, and it seemed to be weak. The wolf's gaze softened, and she could tell it was hungry. It wasn't here to threaten her. It was just lost, alone, and in need of help. Her heart swelled with compassion. Emma didn't hesitate for a second. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the sandwich she had packed for lunch, her favorite peanut butter and jelly. Without a second thought, she knelt down and placed it on the ground, a safe distance from the wolf. Her hands shook a little as she did so, but she tried to stay calm. The wolf watched her with wide eyes, unsure at first, but slowly it began to inch closer. Emma stayed very still, not wanting to startle it. Her voice was barely a whisper when she said, "It's okay. You can eat it. It's for you." The wolf sniffed the air, its nose twitching, and then, with a tentative movement, it bent down and took the food. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she watched it eat, its sharp eyes glancing at her from time to time. It was an unspoken understanding between them. The wolf wasn't afraid. It was simply accepting her gesture of kindness. Emma smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For a long while, the two of them sat there in the silence of the woods, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the soft chewing of the wolf. Emma couldn't remember the last time she had felt so connected to something so wild. The wolf finished the sandwich slowly, its movements deliberate and cautious. Emma watched in awe, her heart swelling with both wonder and compassion. She didn't dare move, not wanting to disturb the quiet moment they shared. The wolf, though wild, seemed to have a silent understanding, accepting her offering with gratitude that spoke volumes. It wasn't just about the food, it was about the trust that had quietly passed between them, something unspoken yet undeniable. As the last crumbs were devoured, the wolf raised its head, eyes locking with Emma's once again. There was no growl, no bark, no show of aggression. Just a quiet recognition in its gaze, as if it were silently thanking her for the meal. Emma couldn't help but smile, her heart light with the strange bond they had formed in such a short time. It was then that she noticed how thin the wolf really was. Its ribs jutted out sharply, and its fur, though thick in some places, was matted and tangled. The wolf was clearly struggling, unable to fend for itself fully in the harsh wilderness. Emma's chest tightened with empathy, and she knew she couldn't just leave it there, vulnerable and hungry. "Are you okay?" she whispered softly, not really expecting an answer. The words hung in the air, more for herself than the wolf. She wasn't sure what she could do, but she knew that she couldn't turn her back on it. The woods, with all their beauty, were also a place of danger, Wild animals had to fend for themselves, and the wolf had clearly been struggling to do just that. The wolf seemed to sense her concern, its gaze softening further as it took a cautious step toward her. Emma stayed still, unsure what to do next, but something in her gut told her that the wolf wasn't a threat. She could see the sadness in its eyes, the weariness that had taken its toll. It wasn't just a wild animal, it was a creature caught in the fight for survival, just like anyone else. After a few moments, the wolf slowly turned and began to walk back toward the trees, its steps slow and measured. Emma stood up, unsure whether to follow or let it go. She watched as the wolf disappeared into the woods, its silhouette fading among the trees. Her thoughts raced. What if it never found food again? What if it wandered farther into the forest and became lost forever? Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a silent promise to help. As the wolf disappeared, Emma lingered in the clearing for a few more moments, the wind rustling through the branches above her. She looked down at the spot where the sandwich had been and noticed the tiniest of paw prints in the soft dirt. They were small but clear, a symbol of the encounter that had just occurred. With a deep breath, Emma gathered her things and slowly made her way home. The encounter with the wolf had left her with a strange sense of fulfillment, but also an unshakable feeling that this was just the beginning of something unexpected. She wasn't sure how, but somehow she knew she would see the wolf again. It wasn't just an ordinary day. It was the start of a quiet bond, one that had changed her forever. That night, as Emma lay in her bed with the covers pulled up to her chin, she couldn't stop thinking about the wolf. Her mind replayed the moment over and over, the way its eyes had met hers, the softness of its movements as it approached the food, and the quiet trust it had shown. Emma had never felt such a connection with an animal before, and it was hard to shake the feeling that something important had happened. It wasn't just a fleeting encounter, it was something deeper, something that had stirred a sense of responsibility in her heart. She turned onto her side, glancing out the window where the full moon illuminated the dark trees of the forest. The wind outside was gentle, rustling the branches, and Emma could almost imagine the wolf moving silently through the woods, still searching for food, or perhaps finding its way home. But she knew it was more than that. She felt an unspoken pull, as if the wolf was somehow reaching out to her, asking for help, though it had never spoken a word. Emma rolled over and stared at the ceiling, her thoughts a whirlwind. What could she do? She had given the wolf her lunch, but it hadn't been enough. She could tell it was struggling, and that thought weighed heavily on her heart. She wasn't sure if there was anything else she could offer, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the wolf needed more than just a sandwich. Could she help? Would it be enough? Her mind raced through all the possibilities, imagining different ways she might assist the wolf. Perhaps she could leave food for it again the next day, or maybe even find a way to help it find shelter. The idea of seeing the wolf again, of being part of something bigger than herself, filled her with a sense of purpose. Emma didn't want to leave the wolf to suffer alone in the cold, harsh world of the forest. She turned to look at the clock on her bedside table. 8:47 p.m. It felt much later than that, the weight of her thoughts making time seem to stretch on forever. Her eyelids grew heavy, but sleep refused to come. She could hear her parents in the other room, the soft murmur of their voices as they went about their evening routine, unaware of the quiet turmoil happening inside Emma's mind. She thought about her parents' advice earlier that day. They had listened patiently as she told them about the wolf. Her mother had smiled gently and said, "Sometimes a kind act can go a long way, Emma. You may never know how much it means to the other person or creature." Her father had added, "The world works in mysterious ways, and your actions matter more than you think." But Emma's thoughts were filled with doubt. What if the wolf was too far gone? What if it was already beyond help? What if she had done the wrong thing by getting involved? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but there was a small flicker of hope, too. She knew in her heart that she couldn't just forget about the wolf. That brief, shared moment of kindness had sparked something inside her. It wasn't just about feeding an animal, it was about making a difference, no matter how small or uncertain the outcome. As she finally drifted into sleep, Emma made a quiet promise to herself. Tomorrow, she would return to the forest. She didn't know what she would do yet, but she knew she couldn't ignore the wolf. It wasn't just a chance encounter, it was a beginning, a connection that she couldn't walk away from. And somehow she believed that the wolf would be waiting for her. The next morning, Emma woke to the sound of birds chirping outside her window. The sun was already rising, casting a warm glow across her room. She stretched, feeling the soft sheets against her skin, but even as the new day began, her mind was still on the wolf. She couldn't help it. The thought of it lingered in her thoughts, just as it had throughout the night. After quickly eating her breakfast and getting ready for school, Emma made her way outside to catch the bus. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of earth and fallen leaves. Despite the usual rush of the morning, Emma found herself walking a little slower than usual. Her eyes kept drifting toward the edge of the forest, where she had seen the wolf the day before. She wondered if it would still be there or if it had moved on, as wild creatures often did. As she walked along the familiar path, she felt a strange mix of excitement and uncertainty. Would the wolf remember her? Was it even still around? Maybe it had just wandered into the forest, never to be seen again. But something inside Emma told her that wasn't the case. She had done something important. She had made a connection, and connections like that didn't easily fade. After school, Emma hurried home as the sun began its descent behind the trees. She was eager to get back to the woods, to see if the wolf was nearby. Her backpack felt heavier than usual as she walked, but it wasn't the weight of her books that made her feel burdened. It was the anticipation. She couldn't shake the feeling that something would be different today. When she reached the edge of the forest, she paused. The wind had picked up slightly, and the branches swayed overhead. The path ahead seemed unchanged, but something caught her eye. Just beside the familiar oak tree where she had met the wolf the day before, she noticed something out of place. At first, Emma thought it was just a pile of fallen leaves, but as she moved closer, she realized it was more than that. A small, carefully arranged pile of shiny stones, bright feathers, and delicate wildflowers sat in the soft earth. The items shimmered in the fading light, each one seeming to hold a special, quiet significance. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The arrangement was so deliberate, as if someone, or something, had taken the time to place it all there. She knelt down to examine it, her fingers gently brushing the smooth stones. There were no other signs of human activity, just the forest, the trees, and this strange, beautiful offering. It didn't take long for Emma to realize what it meant. The wolf had left this for her. She couldn't explain why, but she knew deep down that it was a gift. The wolf, in its own silent way, had responded to her kindness. This was its way of thanking her, of acknowledging their shared moment. Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she reached out and touched the flowers. The simple gesture, the quiet bond, filled her with a deep sense of warmth. The wolf wasn't just a creature of the forest. It was a part of her world now, a living symbol of the unexpected connections that could form when kindness was shown, no matter how small. Emma smiled through her tears, a quiet understanding settling in her chest. She wasn't alone in the world. The wolf had come into her life for a reason, and she knew she couldn't walk away from it now. Over the next few days, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between her and the wolf. It was as if they had become a part of each other's world without ever needing to speak. Every time Emma passed the edge of the forest, she would glance in the direction where she had first met the wolf, half hoping to see it again. She often found herself leaving small bits of food near the trees, just as she had done before, though she never stayed long enough to see if it took them. But soon, something even more remarkable began to happen. One evening, as Emma was walking home from school, the sun low on the horizon and casting long shadows across the dirt path, she noticed a slight movement from the corner of her eye. It was quick, just a flash of movement among the trees, but it was enough to make her stop in her tracks. Her heart skipped a beat. The wolf. It was there watching her. It stood at the edge of the woods, its silhouette barely visible through the thick trees. At first, Emma wasn't sure if it was the same wolf. The fur was slightly different in color, and it looked like a younger one. But then it turned its head, and she saw those same golden eyes staring back at her. The connection was instant. It was the same wolf. her breath caught in her chest. The wolf didn't move toward her, nor did it retreat deeper into the woods. Instead, it stood perfectly still, its gaze locked with hers. Emma stood frozen, her heart beating faster, unsure of what to do. She wasn't afraid, no, not anymore, but there was something deep and primal in the way the wolf watched her. It wasn't a threat. It was just there, watching. For a long while, neither of them moved. The forest around them seemed to grow still as well, as if holding its breath. Emma took a step forward, and the wolf did not flinch or run. It didn't advance either. It simply observed her, a quiet sentinel in the shadows of the trees. Emma smiled softly. She wasn't sure what the wolf's intentions were, but she knew one thing for certain. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't an enemy. It was something else entirely. She had offered the wolf kindness, and in return, it had given her something more than just a simple thank you gift. It had given her its trust, and that meant everything. As Emma took another step forward, the wolf finally moved, but not in the way she had expected. It turned its head and began to walk slowly into the woods, just enough for Emma to catch a glimpse of its retreating figure. The gesture was almost deliberate, as if the wolf were inviting her to follow. Emma hesitated, but something inside her urged her to take that next step, to move deeper into the woods, to see where the wolf might lead her. The connection between them felt undeniable, and Emma knew that this wasn't just a random encounter. This was something much bigger, something that had the potential to change her life in ways she couldn't yet understand. With her heart pounding in her chest, Emma followed. As the days passed, Emma continued her quiet excursions to the edge of the forest, where the wolf had been appearing more and more often. Each time, it would watch her from the shadows, its golden eyes glowing faintly in the twilight. It never came closer, but Emma felt the silent communication between them growing stronger. The wolf, like a guardian, kept a watchful distance, as if it was silently acknowledging her presence, but never fully crossing the boundary between wild and human. The townspeople, however, began to notice something unusual. Emma wasn't the only one who had started to see the wolf. It was appearing more frequently on the outskirts of Willow Creek, always at the edges of the forest, just out of sight from the main road. The first time Mrs. Bennet, the town's elderly librarian, saw the wolf, she thought it was just a trick of the light. But then she saw it again, and this time it was unmistakable. The creature wasn't a shadow or an illusion. It was real, and it was watching her. Word spread quickly. By the end of the week, the entire town was buzzing with rumors of the wolf. Some believed it was an omen, a sign of something to come, while others worried about the safety of the town. After all, wolves were dangerous animals, weren't they? The idea of a wild creature roaming so close to the town was unsettling to some. Emma overheard her parents talking in the kitchen one evening. "Have you heard? People are saying they've seen a wolf near the edge of town. It's starting to worry some of the neighbors." Her mother's voice was calm, but there was a hint of concern. Her father, ever the skeptic, replied, "It's probably just some wild animal. The woods are full of them. As long as it doesn't come near the town, I don't see the problem." Emma knew, though, that the wolf wasn't a threat. She had seen it up close, felt its presence, and knew in her heart that it meant no harm. But it wasn't just a wild animal anymore. It was something more, something that had connected with her in a way she couldn't fully explain. As the weeks went by, something even stranger began to happen. Small, mysterious gifts began appearing around town. Shiny stones, delicate feathers, and wild flowers, strangely arranged in little piles, started to turn up in unexpected places. In the park, by the school fence, and even on the steps of the town hall. No one could explain where they came from, but the townspeople were starting to make the connection. The wolf, they thought, was leaving these gifts as a sign. Some people were enchanted by the mysterious offerings. Others, however, grew more cautious. The wolf, they feared, wasn't just a lone animal anymore. It was a force, something with purpose. Emma, meanwhile, began to leave little offerings of her own. She would gather wildflowers from the field near her house, or smooth stones she found while walking, and place them where the wolf had been spotted. She felt the need to reciprocate, to acknowledge the silent bond they shared. One evening, After leaving another small pile of flowers by the edge of the forest, Emma turned to leave. But as she did, she felt a familiar presence behind her. She turned slowly, and there, standing at the edge of the woods, was the wolf. It was watching her, as always, but this time there was a new clarity in its gaze, a sense of understanding that felt almost human. The wolf tilted its head, its eyes locking with hers. And for a moment, Emma felt as though the entire world had faded away. There was only her, the wolf, and the deep, quiet bond between them. It was more than just a wild animal. It was a creature that had been touched by something greater, something inexplicable. Emma smiled softly, her heart swelling with an unspoken promise. The wolf wasn't just guarding the forest. It had become something much more to her, a part of her life, a part of her world. And somehow she knew that the bond they shared was only just beginning. As the days grew shorter and the first hints of winter touched the air, Emma's bond with the wolf deepened. The visits became more frequent, and the wolf seemed to sense her presence long before she reached the edge of the forest. It would appear, silently emerging from the shadows as if drawn to her by an invisible thread. The connection between them had grown beyond words, and each time they met, Emma felt that same unspoken understanding. The wolf was not just a creature of the wild. It was something more, something ancient and wise. One evening, as Emma made her way to the forest once again, she felt a peculiar sense of anticipation. The air was crisp, and the fading light of dusk bathed the trees in soft shadows. She had brought with her a small bundle of dried herbs, sage, thyme, and lavender, that she had collected from her grandmother's garden. It had become a tradition of sorts, her small offerings to the wolf, a way to show her gratitude for its silent companionship. When she reached the familiar clearing near the oak tree, she paused. The wolf was there, just as it always was. But this time, something was different. It stood in the center of the clearing, waiting for her. Its golden eyes locked with hers, and there was no hesitation, no caution. It was as if the wolf was beckoning her to come closer. Emma's heart raced, but she didn't hesitate. Slowly, she stepped forward, careful not to startle it. As she got closer, the wolf moved, not away from her, but closer, as though inviting her into its world. Emma stopped just a few feet from it, the space between them humming with the quiet intensity of their connection. She could feel the wolf's gaze on her, not as a predator, but as a companion, someone who understood her in a way no one else did. Then, as if in response to her unspoken invitation, the wolf lowered its head. Emma's breath caught in her throat as it carefully nudged something toward her with its nose. A small, delicate object. It was a smooth stone, polished by time and weather, with a deep, swirling pattern of blues and greens. The stone gleamed in the fading light, its colors shifting in the quiet glow of the forest. Emma reached down, her fingers brushing the stone. It felt cool against her skin, the smooth surface worn by nature's hand. She looked up at the wolf, her heart swelling with emotion. The gesture was simple, yet profound. The wolf was giving her something, offering her a part of itself. It was a gift, a symbol of their connection, something to hold on to as a reminder of the bond they shared. The wolf stood silently, watching her with those deep, knowing eyes, as if waiting for her to understand the significance of the gift. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she cradled the stone in her hand. She had no words to express what she was feeling, only the overwhelming sense of gratitude that flooded her heart. The wolf, for its part, seemed satisfied. It slowly turned, as if its work was done, and began to retreat back into the forest. Emma watched it go, her heart heavy yet full. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew this moment would stay with her forever. The wolf had given her more than just a gift. It had given her a piece of the wild, a piece of something untamed and pure, something that could never be explained in simple terms. As the wolf disappeared into the trees, Emma stood alone in the clearing, the stone still warm in her hand, and felt a quiet peace settle within her. She knew that she had been part of something extraordinary. The connection between her and the wolf was a reminder that sometimes the most important bonds were those that couldn't be seen, only felt deep within the heart. Winter had fully settled in by the time Emma returned to the forest one last time. The world had transformed into a frozen wonderland. The trees now heavy with snow, their bare branches stretching like skeletal arms toward the sky. The air was crisp and sharp, and the ground beneath her feet crunched with every step. Yet, despite the cold, Emma felt a warm sense of purpose fill her chest as she made her way to the clearing where she had met the wolf so many times before. She had not seen the wolf for several weeks, and though the town continued to talk about the mysterious creature in hushed tones, Emma knew that the wolf had always come and gone according to its own will. She had not sought it out, but it was always there, watching from the shadows, waiting for their quiet moments of connection. Today was different. She felt it in her bones. The stone the wolf had given her, the one she had kept with her ever since that fateful day, was tucked into her coat pocket. It had become her most cherished possession, a physical reminder of everything the wolf had given her. It was a token, a piece of the forest, of something untamed and beautiful that she had been fortunate enough to witness. As Emma reached the edge of the forest, her breath fogging in the cold air, she paused. For a moment, she stood still, listening to the wind whistling through the trees, the quiet murmur of the world around her. She knew this was where it all began, and where it would come full circle. She didn't know if the wolf would come, or if this was the last time she would visit the forest. But somehow she felt an unspoken certainty that the time had come for the bond between them to be sealed. She stepped into the clearing, her footsteps soft against the blanket of snow. There, standing at the far edge, was the wolf. Its thick fur glistened in the pale winter light, and its golden eyes locked onto hers with the same quiet intensity they always had. There was no need for words, no need for explanation. The bond was unbreakable, and it had always been this way. The wolf stepped forward, its movements slow and deliberate. Emma didn't flinch. She stood still, her heart pounding in her chest, feeling the weight of the moment. As the wolf approached, it stopped just a few feet from her, its gaze never leaving her eyes. And then, as if in answer to her unspoken thoughts, it lowered its head. In that moment, Emma understood. This was the wolf's final gift to her, not just the stone, or the kindness, or the silent companionship. It was the trust that it had placed in her all along. A wild creature, once untamed and solitary, had shared its world with her. And in return, Emma had offered it something priceless: her heart, her compassion, her belief in the beauty of the wild. The wolf raised its head, its eyes full of something deeper than just animal instinct. There was a look of gratitude, of understanding, as if to say, "Thank you." And with that, it turned and began to walk back into the forest, disappearing among the trees, leaving Emma standing alone in the snow, her heart full. As the wolf's figure faded into the distance, Emma smiled softly, the stone still warm in her pocket. She knew that the bond they shared was not one that could be easily broken. It wasn't about ownership or control. It was about understanding and respect, respect for the wild, for nature, for life in its purest form. And with that final act, Emma knew that her connection with the wolf was something that would stay with her forever. The forest would always be there, as would the memory of the wolf. The gift it had given her was more than just a stone. It was a piece of the wildness that lived within her, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary connections are the ones that are silent but unbreakable.